Welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Ellie.
Now, do you ever think about retirement and what age you'd want to give up work?
When would you like to give up work?
Well, it's a funny old thing because my dad's 86 and he's still 86 this year and he still works. He loves it. He reckons if he stops working, he'll drop dead. But I'm approaching my middle ages now and I would like to, I think, knock it on the head a bit before that.
OK.
Certainly.
When are you thinking then?
In a few years. Soon.
Oh. OK.
Yeah, because a lot of people are doing that now, especially during the pandemic. I think we all sort of say, well, is it a point beyond this hamster wheel all the time? A lot of people are selling up, they're getting out of cities, they're moving away, they're downsizing, they're mortgage-free. Sounds pretty tempting.
Yeah, feeling like there's more to life than work.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about this because new research shows 8 in 10 employees are concerned about when they're due to retire because of the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, and financial pressures are also causing employees to stop paying into their work pensions.
Well, we can speak now to the Director of Wealth at Work, Jonathan Watts-Ley. Good morning to you, Jonathan. Very, very good to have you with us. And I mean, the reality is people will be nervous, won't they? Because in order to retire, you need to be very financially secure.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's one of the issues, is that the research highlights that really across the age ranges, people are concerned about when they will be able to retire. And certainly those that are nearer what may have been their aspirational retirement are realising that maybe they won't be able to do that now. And that's for a number of reasons, really. Clearly, the cost of living crisis is one of them, and they feel as though they might need to carry on working because their pension pot isn't going to last as long as they thought it would.
I think another part of the problem here, though, Jonathan, is that the pension age seems to be getting moved further and further north all the time. I feel sometimes by the time I get to my retirement age, then the pension age is going to be 95 anyway.
Well, that's right. And of course, a lot of people, even though they know that the state pension may be actually quite a cornerstone in terms of the income that they will need in retirement, a lot of people actually want to retire before their state pension age. So again, I think this is one of the impacts that it's having, is that some people are saying, well, have I got enough of my private pension to see me through before I get to my state pension? And I think that's one of the crunch areas right now.
Of course, we're all living longer, aren't we? I mean, we were just talking just before we spoke to you, we were chatting about it in the break. We were saying traditionally you'd think about retiring at 60. Martin's still hoping to do so. But if you live until your mid-90s, 100 years old, which isn't actually that rare these days, I mean, that could be 40 years that you have to live off this lump sum.
Yeah, and previous research has shown that people completely underestimate how long they're likely to live. So, I mean, on one hand, that's great news. They're going to live longer than they think. But on the other hand, of course, they need to have the finances to see them through. And of course, one of the problems with retirement is you don't quite know how much money you're going to need over such a long period of time. So, for example, if you think about as people get older and they start getting various ailments, and they might need to spend more money on health or getting people coming in to help them in the home. So often you find that people retire, they spend proportionately a bit more money because they want to go on holiday, then they slow down, they spend less money, but then their costs start to kick up a little bit again as they get older. But of course, it's very hard to predict what that kick up is going to be because it's very personalised. It depends on health and various other factors.
Do you think that there's been a bit of government pressure recently to try and court older people back into the workplace? So people with lots of skills, lots of life experience, particularly things like teaching, nursing. Is that going to become, do you think, increasingly necessary to address shortages? For example, why are we importing so much labour from overseas, particularly in areas like teaching and nursing, when we have a huge amount of wealth, of knowledge, a font of knowledge of people who are retired, getting them back into the workplace? A, it's good for the economy. B, it keeps immigration down, if you like. And most of all, it tops up the ability to not rely just on your pension. But do people want to do that? Or are people just happily just retiring?
Well, I think we've seen it, and I think you mentioned it at the start of this piece, is that when COVID hit, there were a lot of people that actually maybe facing redundancy, and because they were at an age of, let's say, late 50s, early 60s, where they thought, well, actually, I will treat this as retirement. I wasn't planning to retire quite this early, but the situation I'm now in, I will retire. So there was a good number of people that left the workforce. Now, I suspect, and the data is still coming through on this, so we'll have to see how it all pans out. But I suspect a lot of those people who retired earlier than perhaps they initially wanted to now realise that, again, with the cost of living, their pension simply isn't going to last all those years that as you point out, they're likely to live. So I actually think there will be this natural movement back into the workplace of some of those workers. Now, whether they will go back to the job that they had before, whether they will go back to full-time jobs, I think is yet to be seen in the data. But I think there will be a movement back where people say, I do need to have additional income to supplement my pension.
Jonathan, for people who are watching and listening this morning and are considering retirement, what would your advice to them be? What sorts of things do they need to be considering?
So I think the first thing is to make sure that they understand what all their pensions are worth. On average, the average person apparently has about 11 jobs during their working lives. So potentially somebody could have 11 pensions. Some may have even more. So I think the first thing to do is know where your pensions are and know what your pensions are worth, because until you know that, it's very hard to calculate anything in terms of can you afford to retire. I think the other thing to do is get your state pension forecast as well. So you can go onto the government website, put in your national insurance number, and basically get your forecast. Because let's not forget, state pension for a lot of people will actually be the bulk of their retirement income. So it's really important to know what that number will be. And for those who have other types of savings and investments, so for example ISAs, again, understand what those are worth, because of course for a lot of people now, pulling all those savings together, a combination of pensions and other savings, that can all form part of what may be a retirement income for you. So I would suggest that is the most important thing to do. The second most important thing to do is then probably to work out what you think you need in retirement. Now, this is going to be different for different people. Some people might be looking forward to a very kind of modest retirement where they don't anticipate spending lots of money. Other people may decide that they want to travel the world. So clearly, depending on what your ambition is for retirement, your income needs are going to be different. And then you can start doing this match about will the income that I can realistically generate from my pensions match actually my expenditure and give me an income for as you say, it might be 25, 30 years into the future. I think for a lot of people, they're going to need to get help as well. So they should be talking to their employer, because a lot of employers do support people as they come up to retirement and help them understand options. There's also websites that they can go to. So there's the moneyhelper.org.uk website, which is a government-run website, but it gives some information around, actually cost of living, but also through to pensions.
I've got a question for you, Jonathan. Am I correct in assuming, is it July the 31st as a cut-off point this year where you're allowed to make... I've got a question for you, Jonathan. Am I correct in assuming, is it July the 31st as a cut-off point this year where you're allowed to make voluntary national insurance contributions for historical time you may have missed? For example, if you're self-employed, or if you missed parts like I did for travelling, you have the ability to voluntarily pay that in now, so you get a full state pension when you retire. Is it worth doing that? So for every pound you put in, do you get your money back? Or because people are pretty tight with money at the moment because of cost of living crisis, is it wiser to hold on to the money, or should we make sure that we're all fully up to date on contributions for NI historically?
Yeah, so this deadline is just the number of years that you can go back. So you will still be able to do it after July, but you won't be able to count as many years. So it's not an absolute deadline in that you won't be able to do it in the future. But in terms of is it worthwhile doing, then the key thing that you need to think about is where is that money coming from? So you know, if you're going to go and take a loan out in order to pay in more contributions, that may not be considered a particularly good idea. I think the other thing that you need to think about is actually whether having that higher income, if you're already on a low income, then it may impact other benefits that you will get when you get to retirement age. Now that's often a very difficult thing to work out, because of course you can take it based on what the situation is today, but if your retirement is 5, 10, 15 years away, then it's very hard to know what benefits will be available and what the criteria will be for those benefits. So at face value, it is a good thing to do. So people should definitely look into